Welcome to No Entry Level, a podcast about hiring, managing, and maybe firing entry-level employees. We explore what it means to be great early career talent, especially in an AI-powered world. I'm your host, Jeremy Smith. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pegasix, an entirely new kind of higher ed that creates AI-first entry plus product builders who start their careers with the skills of a second or third year employee from day one. And with me today is Peter Ngai, the principal architect at SnapLogic. Peter is responsible for leading the strategic integration initiatives across the platform. And SnapLogic's intelligent integration platform focuses on helping organizations automate complex workflows and enable data-driven decision-making. Peter, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Jeremy. Just as an added surprise, I was recently promoted to VP of engineering, but
nice.
Architecture is one of my areas I do cover.
Oh,
so
that's great. Well, congratulations.
Still spot on. Thank you.
And it still says architect under, well, I guess you typed it there when you entered, but
Nice.
so you still see yourself as an architect, regardless of what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I kind of see myself as like an architect / engineer / mentor.
Yeah. Architect, I find, is an interesting career path and particularly relevant here. This wasn't a topic I was planning to run down, but as we're talking about your titles, it made me think of it, which is architect is one of the few roles where there isn't really an entry-level version of it, where you are something else, and then as you progress sort of mid to high level, that's when the opportunity to be an architect kind of enters the picture. And I've just found that, I mean, it makes complete sense, but I've always found that interesting, that there's no entry-level role for architects. I mean, like a junior architect,
Right.
that sort of thing.
It's almost like if you take it back to like the traditional tradesmiths, like people that were building houses, right? You don't start off as like a person writing up the blueprints and drafting up and being a foreman of all the crew,
Right.
right? You start off as being, hands-on. Maybe you're the person putting in plaster on the walls or putting up the frames of the houses and such. And essentially, after you gather enough experience, you get to graduate into, okay, now I'm going to draft up the blueprints because I know how houses are made.
Right.
I know what patterns to follow.
Yes.
So it kind of follows that trade. Although the term architect is it's fairly widely used these days, I think.
Right.
In my trade and background, since I graduated through the ranks with software engineering, like I graduated with computer science, and then I was a coder, right? When I graduated school and I started working. And then eventually I learned all the patterns of, coding and what are best practices, how to build enterprise systems. And after a while, how to work with other people. That was a big thing for me. Naturally introverted. And then I started graduating into like the area of architecture. Right. So
no, it's fascinating. Yeah, it is. It's one of those roles where and again, it goes back to why there isn't really an entry-level version of it, because one of the core characteristics is wisdom, right? Accumulated wisdom. And you literally can't have that right out of the box, right? That takes 7 years, 8 years, 10 years to get the necessary accumulated wisdom to be an architect.
Yeah, there's like different facets. Like, I mean, I think, like coming out of Pegasix, like maybe you might have the technical traits, right? Which is one part of it, right? But the other part of it is like how to work with other people, right? So you might also get that at Pegasix, right? And then you might have a third facet, which may be business acumen of the industry you're working in, right? And then that was a little harder because sometimes people usually gather that with experience, right? So just having to work in the field.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny you mentioned that, the kind of the professional skills, the soft skills, because that is something, one of the things, just a little bit about us for a second, just because it's relevant to the line of discussion. But, the reason that we've created Pegasix and are launching really our first cohort this year is because kids were coming out of college not only with no technical skills for whatever job it is, software engineering included, but also none of the soft skills. And so we wanted to ensure that they came out with both, again, the equivalent of like a second or third year employee. And, the reason, or I shouldn't say the reason, but because reasons are pretty obvious, but the way that we do it is our curriculum. It's an intense, 2,200 hour 1 year program. So it's 50 hours a week every week. Yeah. And the kids are learning to build software by spending every one of those hours building software, right? And they're building it. Every single product build they do over the course of the year is done in cross-functional teams of software developer students working with product manager students. And over the years, as we launch additional, they're called career accelerators, each one's focused on a single career path. And over the years, as we begin launching other career accelerators for product design, data science, cybersecurity, all of the students from those accelerators are added to the product builds, so that when you're a software developer student at Pegasix in the year 2030, every product build you do will be with 3 other developer students, a product manager student, a product marketing student, 2 data science students, and 2 cybersecurity students. And the teams are mixed up throughout the year, and so you can't help but develop and refine the soft skills because you're spending 50 hours a week every week for a year using
Yes.
them to work on these cross-functional teams and get software built, because it is so important, to your point, to have those the technical skills and the soft skills.
Yeah. Well, that sounds really valuable.
Yeah.
That's great.
No, thanks.
That's a great
No,
approach.
I appreciate it. So kind of looping back to the entry levels, when I say the entry level employee, what sort of word association, what pops into your mind?
I think of a person
And
who
by
is
the way,
pretty
feel free to
green.
be
Yeah.
brutally honest. No need to to be diplomatic unless you want to.
Sure, sure thing, sure thing. I mean, yeah, entry level. I kind of, to me, is like what I visualize as someone who's pretty green, right out of school, almost unaware of the real world, right?
It's funny. I mean, that's such a yeah. It is so apt. That unaware is all encompassing. I think that's a great word for it.
And I don't mean that as like a negative aspect, right? It's almost like the the not knowing what you don't
Right.
know is actually the sky is the limit. There's nothing that's
Right.
impossible. There's just no boundaries, no right, no guardrails or anything, and it's the most influential time that one can be. And I remember when I was like entry level, and I was powered, being a pure introvert. All I wanted to do was code, and I just wanted to be in a corner, and I was energized with just a Snicker bar. That's all I needed. I mean, that was it, right? And I would code up anything. Like that was the most energizing time in my life,
Yeah.
right? And essentially, I kind of, when I think about like entry level, I think about a person who's like high energy and they are so capable of doing anything they
Right.
wanted to. Just provide them some guidance and they're just running out of the gate,
Right.
right? Just tell them where to
Yeah.
go. Right? And I think of it that way. And I also think of them, the term entry level is being very influential, right? So it's almost like, and that's why being, well, from a mentor side of perspective, now that I know, it's almost like it's very important to guide that because it is so easy to kind of like fall into the dark side, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
using as an
Yeah.
example,
No,
but
no,
it
absolutely.
could be. You just got to make sure things are proper,
Yes.
right? So,
Yeah.
and I've seen that so many times, like both directions, which is
Yeah. It's funny to use sort of continue with the analogy you were using of the dark side. I mean, it's true because if you have a young Padawan, right? If you
yeah.
put them under a Sith Lord or under a
Oh,
Jedi, right? That's going to completely change the path that they're on and what they become, right? So to your
that's right.
point,
That's right.
that's actually a really good analogy because it's true. It just depends, the conditions and person you put them under will
Mhm.
dictate, not completely, but a pretty good amount, who they will become professionally.
Exactly, exactly, because that's the most influential time in anyone's career, right? It's right out of the gates when you have that energy, and you have that being easily influenced, I think of that. And so, entry I kinda see that all of the above, right? And I also see, um, certain things that could, uh, be worked to their advantage and not so much like because sometimes people don't know what they don't
Right,
know, and so like if a new engineer is coming out of the gates, they just want to code the world as
right.
fast as they can, right? and then they're gonna be like, I'm gonna create me a system that does this, and I'm gonna have like authentication, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna code up that system too. And then that's when you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I was like, yeah. I was like, you can actually integrate with an identity management system rather than coding one up yourself,
Right.
because maybe that's just an easier path, right?
Better quality, higher security, like all sorts of advantages. But
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. The energy. They're just
exactly.
like, I'm gonna build the world. I'm gonna build the world.
And just being able to, and that's like all entry level, but you just kind of provide the guidance of concentrate here, because this is where things are really important, right? And this is where you're gonna win the most, right? And so I think it's important for people to learn that, right? So there is like it's all about
Yep.
prioritization.
Absolutely. And so for SnapLogic, how do you guys hire entry level employees? Like, how many are you typically hiring in a year? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, we do hire entry level. They usually come in as master students of um, like a computer science or a data science program.
Interesting. So you're not hiring out
Uh,
of undergrad.
and the reason being, just some background there, because I've worked for a lot of companies over the years, and other companies we actually go to like college campuses and
Yeah.
recruit, right, and things like that. At SnapLogic, one of our chief scientists is actually a professor at a local at a USF, which is a local
Yeah.
university,
South
University of San
Florida. Oh,
Francisco.
San Francisco, not
And
USF. I thought South Florida, San Francisco. Got you.
right, 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 right. And so he has a lot of candidate students,
Mm,
and so essentially we've been able to use that um, for recruitment.
right.
And I think it was really important, especially back in the day when it was hard to
Right.
hire. I mean,
Right.
because obviously it's always like a buyer's market or a
Right.
seller's
Right.
market, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's a seesaw. Yeah. Gotcha. So okay. So now why does because I think USF has an undergrad program. So why is it that he only hires or you guys only hire at the graduate level rather than at the undergrad level for USF?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of the candidates that come in as like new hires, they're basically and he teaches like master's curriculum.
Gotcha.
So that's one thing. That's one reason. It's not that we don't actually hire from other sources. We do. Um, a lot of the algorithms that are in that we have in our code base, a lot of it is very highly complex. I would have to say, like the algorithm space, right?
Right.
Um, and so sometimes it requires like a maybe someone who, maybe not from an undergraduate, although not saying they can
Yeah.
handle it,
No,
because
no.
I've seen some pretty sharp folks. Um, and so it's just kind of like a general rule of thumb,
Right.
I would have to
Yeah,
say.
no, there's just more complexity and sophistication. I mean, like I said, like most software companies don't have chief science officers. So it kind of, I think, speaks to the type of complexity in your code base that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, we have several components that are like essentially multi-threaded time slicing, the way it dissects um, components and documents as it comes into the system, streams through the system, multi-threaded. I mean, it's pretty fascinating, some of the components and what they do.
Yeah, that's good. How long have you been in SnapLogic?
Coming up on 3 years.
3 years. Nice.
Coming up on 3 years. Yeah,
3 years
yeah.
and already got the VP of engineering title added on to the stack. Not bad.
Well, in previous companies, I was VP of this or that, and also like head of operations and architecture and stuff like that. So graduated through the ranks, and I think when I came to SnapLogic, it was my first return to like an IC role, or
Yeah.
not actually having a staff under me
Right.
initially,
Right.
and
Did
then
you now be honest,
where
did you love that or did you hate that?
I
You love
no, I
you
love
love it.
I
You're an introvert. So you're like,
it's
this is perfect.
yes. It's like a license to play. I don't know how else to kind of phrase it. Like that's how I viewed it.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I get to sit back and play now. Like I get to like try the latest technologies. It's just like, wow, okay.
That is great. So what does your team look like now? I mean, I guess as VP of engineering with that department under you, what does the team kind of look like then?
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. So I do cover like several areas in SnapLogic, and the areas I do cover obviously is first is
Yep.
architecture, and then I also cover QA. I also cover IT and security as
Mm.
well, and as well as documentation, docs.
Right.
It's pretty broad, I would
Yeah.
say.
So looping back to the entry level side of things, whether hiring from undergrad or from grad school or elsewhere, how has sort of the rise of AI over the past couple of years um, changed your thinking around the entry level hires, if at all?
It actually has, and it's fascinating how it's really accelerated over the past even 6 months, right? I would even say. Um, I mean, at first it seemed kind of like a fun toy, right? Like ChatGPT. Hey, what would happen
Right.
if I did this?
Yeah.
Whoa, look at it! It actually knew what I was talking about, right? It's like so now where I can like vibe code a new mobile app, right? And I did that like a couple weeks ago, and it was just incredible, end to end, right? And just what it can produce, and I think it actually has changed the course, especially for entry level candidates and such. I've also had the opportunity of like sponsoring some master's projects at USF
Yeah.
at SnapLogic, and the students that were basically part of this project, they themselves are so well versed in using these AI tools
Interesting.
nowadays. Yeah, I was learning from them. It was just fascinating to watch, and they are so quick. They're basically using AI tools that I'm like, "How did you do that?" And he's like, "I just did it."
Right.
Like, "Whoa, okay, that's great." I mean, and, it's just amazing because, like, they're able to encompass AI not as, a threat, so to
Right.
say, to their work,
Right.
right? They really encompass it as an assistant
Right.
to them.
Right.
I think that is actually the magic unlock,
Yeah.
right? Because
Totally.
sometimes you look at like, other employees that may have been around for quite a few years, and they still think that AI is a
Right.
fad, and they're really and they
Yeah.
haven't unlocked the use of
Right.
it or just the
Or they use
mentality.
some one-time horror story to justify
Yes.
not using it at all.
That's right, that's
Yeah.
right. And so it's like really to their own fault that they can't use AI as their assistant.
Yes.
And so you kinda see them kinda faltering behind,
Yeah.
right? Anybody who's coming in as entry level, they're coming in the door with all these tools already, and it's amazing, and they're able to use it to their advantage, and they move at, like, hyper
Yeah.
speed in comparison to, like, when I was growing up, I was like, "Hey, that's gonna take me a whole week to code that baby up," right? And they're like, "No, I could do it in, like, 10 minutes. I'm thinking maybe 12." Right? I'm like,
Yeah.
"What the wow." Like, that's incredible.
That's no, that's great. Would you say that you are now more likely to hire entry level, less likely, the same as before, before sort of the AI
Yeah.
revolution?
I would say it would definitely I mean, yeah, it doesn't inhibit entry level to come in the door at all whatsoever. Um, I think it basically opens it up and like whoever comes in the door, whether they have 20 years of experience or whether they have 0 years of experience, the key is they need to have that as part of their
Yeah.
toolbox. Like they have to understand what AI is, right?
Yeah.
If they look at us and go, "What's that? I don't know if I need to believe in that." That's like
Yeah.
we just like, "I
Yeah.
don't know, that's gonna work
Major
out."
red flag. Yeah.
If you look at AI through like even before entry level, like it's actually part of education now, right? So it's like my I have a son, he's a high school senior, right? And they're already using AI, right, to help with their work.
Yeah.
And it's like so baked into the education system now that everything coming through the ranks is already a part of their fabric.
Yeah. It's true. And that's what, similarly for Pegasus, we I mean, not only do is higher ed, undergrad in particular has been debating that how do we use AI or rather have our students use it or not? Do we ban it? How do we do this? And, for us, because our whole mission is to optimize these kids for the real world that they're going to be entering, there was never a doubt that, okay, the kids that we're producing, they need to be these AI native, AI first entry plus employees, right? Their first thought, just like, sort of uh, our generation or maybe a little bit younger, they at some point their mentality different from us was Google first, right? Just you can get all your answers on Google. So Google versus we're like, well, we're not sure to do that. Maybe we should talk to our colleagues, blah, blah, blah. It was like, no, Google first. And you'll most likely find the best answers. And then if not, then you use some of the old school ways, right? And I feel
Right.
it's similar in Pegasus. We approach it similarly where it's like, do your job. You're here building software, learn to do it AI first, have it take you as far as it can, as fast as it can. And then
Right.
when it can't get you over the finish line, because oftentimes it can't, that's when you roll up your sleeves, dig into the code, do the final, last mile connections or corrections or whatever it might be to make it what it needs to be. But, don't just start coding, from the beginning and then maybe in the middle, use AI a little bit. Like from the beginning, your first thought should always be, how could I use AI to improve the speed or the quality of what it is that I'm doing?
Right.
Because you just have to be, like you were saying, in the modern world, it's just the way you 10x yourself at least 10x yourself, from a productivity standpoint and, just your overall capabilities to be that way. And the kind of another analogy I use, because you talked about it as what it is, which is an incredibly powerful tool, is I say, look, think of Pegasus and what we're trying to do. We're a lumberjack school. Would it make any sense for us to say, okay, everybody, I know everyone uses chainsaws, but that's not how you're going to learn to cut down a tree. It's going to be all hand saws. That's you're going to learn to just the old seesaw, like like done for the last 200 years. That's how you're going to do it. It would be nonsensical, right? We need to graduate lumberjacks who are masters of the chainsaw, not familiar with it, not avoiding it, masters of it, because that's the best lumberjack. Now, they still need to know the fundamentals, right? You need to know wood grains and things like that, so that as you're using that tool, you're doing still the best, cut that you can do. But you need to, any lumberjack who is a master of the chainsaw will destroy any lumberjack who just knows the handsaw. Not
Right.
even a
Right.
question. You would never even think about just limiting it to, teaching your lumberjacks handsaw, how to use a handsaw.
When I learned how to type, I actually started on a manual typewriter. And
No kidding. Oh, wow.
so I can imagine.
That is
It's like,
pretty, that's pretty good. It's funny. Have you ever heard the story of, so the keyboard, the QWERTY keyboard layout? Do
yeah.
you know why it's laid out that way?
I remember that story a long time, but I don't recall it
Yeah, so
though.
it goes back to the typewriter. So in the days of the typewriter, when the keyboard was originally invented, if you remember, some keyboards, or I'm sorry, some typewriters, well, especially the early ones, most typewriters in the early days, when you would type, a hammer would come up, right? And you hit R, and then the R hammer
Yes.
comes up and puts an R on the page, right? And then whatever letters it might be. So what happened in the earliest days is they laid out the keyboard in a much more efficient, in a very efficient way, different than the QWERTY one you see. But the problem was people were typing so fast that the hammers would get stuck, right? Because
Yes.
before this one could retract, the person was able to hit the other letter so fast that they were there at the same time.
The arms used to click.
That's exactly right. And so what they did was they created the QWERTY layout to be intentionally less efficient, so that it would slow down your typing naturally, and therefore it
Oh,
would give the hammer time to retract before the next one came up. That's the QWERTY
nice.
keyboard is intentionally less efficient, and so that the hammers didn't get stuck. But now there are no hammers, but everybody just knows QWERTY, so you just kind of keep on going. It's kind of like the metric system. It makes a lot more sense, but we're not
That's
going to
right.
convert because we've just been on the whatever it's called, American Standard System or what have you for so long.
Do they even call it typewriters anymore? I don't know.
I I don't know, but you know what's actually, speaking of typewriters, what is also very interesting, is in the early days, well, I guess maybe still in the early days, but in the earlier days of AI, as people were, and I guess people still are, talking about how AI is just going to just destroy society, which, I mean, look, there's
Mhm.
still a non-zero chance that could happen. But was interesting is, people also talk about, there's a counter narrative, which I, agree with in large extent, which is, look, this is what everybody says about any transformative technology, right? Steam engine, the computer, whatever it may have been, the flying Jenny for the weaving industry, and everybody said this. And while there was great disruption, at the time, in the short term, in the end, I mean, you have to remember when they said, the flying Jenny was going to put everyone out of jobs and the economy will be destroyed. Yes, in the late 1700s. Well, not only didn't it do that, but we now have 10 times as many people, right, as back then,
Right.
and we only have 4% unemployment. So not only were there enough jobs for the 15 million people back then, but there's enough jobs for 350 million people now. I mean, I guess that's the entire population and children don't work, but so you get what I'm saying? Like it's 10, 20
Yes.
times, 100 times greater, and there's still enough jobs for that larger population. And
That's right.
and I bring that up because interestingly, the typewriter came with similar fears. I never knew it was seen as such a disruptive technology, but it was, and people were very afraid about what it might do to the economy, but also what it might do to just society in general. As people were, typing letters rather than writing them, and
Yeah.
but it ended up being transformative in its own way that was positive, incredibly positive. And it created more jobs, new careers. It was a secretary and all these things. And it was actually the typewriter, even and the bicycle. Also, these technologies we take for granted today are obsolete today in some ways, but they actually opened up order of magnitude more jobs, but also more freedom for women. In the example of like bicycles and typewriters, there's so many more job opportunities for women, and bicycles let women get around. Whereas before they couldn't leave their house or they would walk, but they couldn't drive cars. But bicycles, they could, and it extended their, sort of geographic radius in terms of where they could go and what they could do. And
Right.
so we've gone far afield from entry level jobs, but just the typewriter, AI, disruptive, yes, but my personal opinion is I think it will end up opening up so many more opportunities than it will destroy. But who knows?
Yeah.
I thought Dancing with the Stars would last 3 episodes. Shows what I know.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I am totally looking forward to like the next evolutionary step, and I'm kind of curious, anticipating what that's going to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I know that we can create software systems that are so complex now at a fraction of the time. That just means that, okay, we can create more of these quickly. But what that really means is that the next evolutionary step of computer systems are going to be so intelligent and so vast and so complex.
Yes.
I'm really curious what that's going to be. I mean, I know people are already working on flying cars, right?
Yeah.
That might be a
Yeah.
reality, right?
Finally,
So,
by the way, I should say, I mean, come on. I've been expecting flying cars for the past 25. When I was a kid,
yeah,
I was told by the year 2000 we were going to have flying cars, and that date came and went in 26 years. No flying cars. So good. We
right.
better have
The Jetsons, right? The
Yeah,
Jetsons,
exactly.
right, just went right by. And exactly. I mean, it's just like, what is the next evolution? It's going to be incredible,
Yeah.
right? And so,
It is,
uh,
and it's interesting, and I agree with that on so many levels, including I think one of the things that people don't I don't know if appreciate's the right word, but if they're just not thinking of is and it touches exactly on what you were saying, which is the ease and rapidity with which you can now generate software, right? I think that will lead to these quantum leaps so much faster. Not only because the AI itself obviously can think and do faster, and not only its processing power, continues to go up and up and up and all of that, but because it is so much easier for us to create things, software things, then we can mess around a lot more, right? We can it's disposable code, right?
yeah,
Before you could just, you're not just going to mess around creating some app or something like that because it's going to take you weeks or months, right? To
right,
just get
right.
something less than basic, right? And you still have a full-time job and a family and all of that. But now it's disposable code. I'm watching this TV show. I just had this idea for this thing. I'm going to just mess around a little bit while I'm half watching, half vibe coding, and boom. And yeah, I guess it didn't pan out. It was garbage, throw it away. But when you have millions of people doing that, you are going to have these, I wouldn't call them accidental, but these discoveries that there just wasn't enough time to accidentally bump into or figure your way into because it was too cumbersome to go on that journey. But now, that you can now that the car exists, metaphorically speaking, we're talking about flying cars, but now that the car exists, I can travel so many places, to just explore. I couldn't before, because to walk there or take my horse would have taken forever. I could go see maybe 2 places, but with my car now, I could go see 100 places in the time I could have seen 4 with my
Yeah.
horse, right? And that just sort of exploration and discovery and play really, I think, is going to be part of what causes that future that I think you're rightfully so excited about.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, things are gonna be so even a smaller world now, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, it's a small world already, but now it's gonna get even
Yeah.
smaller.
No, it's the truth. So you kind of last question, what do you think
Yeah.
then, on this topic, what do you think a software developer looks like in 5 years? What do you think that they need to be? I mean, I guess at the entry level, but in general, what do you think that person looks like?
That's a really great question because I've always thought, like, even what's the future of, like, software engineering or software engineer? But I think, like, in 5 years' time, if you look at a very productive software engineer, it's gonna be a person who has obviously embraced AI, using it as a tool. They are highly, highly productive. They are gonna be they're gonna be working on some enterprise systems, and when I say the word enterprise, it's gonna be much larger than today's enterprise systems. Are gonna be a lot more complex. And they are, and I believe that they're going to be much more in tune with business acumen as well. Right? They're going to be much more in tune with, like, oh, the user really needs this, and this is what the next step is. We're going to build it out this way because I think they're going to need it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so they're just going to be. It's just going to intensify. The intelligence is just going to reach outward, and they're going to be business acumen,
Right.
right? And they're going to have a huge tool bags. They're going to be highly efficient, highly productive, work on highly complex matters. But that's going to be incredible, right? And that's when people like me go out to pasture, but that's fine because everything's well taken care of. Because I want to be in my flying car visiting 50 places.
That is great. And so, follow-up question on that then. Do you and it's funny being an architect, something is my founders and I are thinking about, again, what it is we are transforming these high school graduates as we're saying, "Hey, don't go to college and waste your time and money. Instead, come to Pegasus, you start your career 3 years early, and 3 years earlier, $250,000 ahead of where you would have been had you gone to college, right? You're just launched into your career as this AI first product builder. One of the things that we're kind of playing with is we're again trying to always look to the future because we want to build these kids for the future, not the present, which will very quickly become the past. And one of the things that ideas we've just been playing around with is that as the AI is doing a lot more of that, grunt work and that the lower level stuff, or what historically had been lower level stuff, that these kids may need to act and think more like architects. As these systems are building the systems, they've got to be thinking about how all of it, now it's in their own little microcosm of whatever it is, that they're building, but still they need to be thinking more as an architect and how these pieces fit together and thinking 3 steps ahead so they can see what maybe the AI is going to run into as it's building in this way or this direction. I'm curious what you think of that idea or that line of thinking.
I think that's spot on. And the reason being is because when you start to use like Claude Code or whatever you may want to, pick your poison, but essentially to help build out your system, maybe you become really good at prompting, maybe, but overall, you're starting to become really good at orchestrating.
Right.
You're orchestrating the system.
Right.
You know this in your mind, the steps to take, the skeletal steps to
Right.
take in a framework. Like, yeah, I'm going to build out these screens first or these components first. And that, oh, I'm going to need end-to-end testing.
Right.
Well, I'm going to add that next, right?
Right.
I'm going to add, and you start to build it out. And then essentially, I myself might not be like typing out the React native code or anything for the new mobile app, but essentially I'm vibe coding it. I know the steps that
Right.
needs to be taken.
Yes.
I understand what good quality in that
Right.
means. oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to think about how this is gonna pass Apple's vetting
Right.
and get it into the App Store. I'm
Right.
gonna tell it that, right?
And talking about business acumen, right? To even think about that
Yeah.
sort of stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because you have the time now to think about it, and you're not doing that before because you would have just been in the code going, how can I get the button over here? Or how, right? Or how can I have persistence in this thing or whatever it is? And
Yes.
now, right, it's okay, well, good. That's
Yeah, exactly. And that orchestration is very architect-like, right?
right.
Because that's
Yeah.
essentially like what I do,
Yeah.
right? Like I connect one thing to I connect the product manager with the software engineer.
Right.
I help translate that. I'm the conduit. I help, orchestrate. Oh, I know this is going to have to pass compliance before this gets released. So
Right.
I'm going to have to work with legal.
Right.
I'm just orchestrating it all.
Yeah.
Right? So essentially, if a person who's like vibe coding a new system or entry level
Right.
person creating a new system, they are essentially doing the same thing. Right?
Yeah.
Even though it's on their laptop.
Yeah.
But they are orchestrating the building of a system. So
Yeah.
no, it's pretty much spot on.
Awesome.
It's the same frame of thought.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, with that, Peter, I wanted to thank you for joining me today on No Entry Level. Loved getting to hear your thoughts on the entry level world of today and tomorrow, and love what you're doing. Love the way you think about things, and it's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, Jeremy. I really appreciate this. This has been great. Thank you.
Super. My pleasure.